RPGs, one of the most beloved and historic genres known to video gaming. It's also one of my favorites. It's a genre that's seen its shares of highs and lows, but has always stayed strong throughout that time. It's for that reason that I invited my good friend, BioPhoenix, onto the podcast to discuss RPGs and why they mean so much to us. So stay tuned and enjoy the podcast for the love of RPGs. All right, good afternoon, lovely listeners of the web. It's me, Majora T, and I'm joined by a very special guest.
Hello everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and welcome to Majora T's Thingy-ma-hooper.
That's a great name for it. I should retitle it.
Alright, well, what was it actually called again?
So it's called the Majora T Cast. There was no inspiration to that. It's just put my name in front of podcast, and there you go. But Thingy-ma-hooper is a good runner-up.
Yeah.
If I ever do a new series, I'll keep that in mind. Anyways, we're here to talk about a special topic, the topic that I've been focusing on for what seems like ages now, but it's rightfully so because it is RPGs. And RPGs are known to take ages. So I invited you specifically, BioPhoenix, because I feel like you have some expertise on the genre, and I want to get some of your insight into it.
Alrighty, cool stuff. And yeah, I'd say I'm pretty well versatile with them. I mean, I've played them for quite a few years.
All right. So, having played them for a few years, would you say that RPGs are important to you?
Yeah, I'd say they were pretty important to me for that, like I think that they always had like a really like cool story that were very different compared to a lot of other games I played. Like, you know, like I played a lot of like Donkey Kong Country and Mario games where, you know, the story was, you know, rescue things and, you know, beat the bad guys, blah blah blah, you know, all the typical good stuff. But then with an RPGs, like they were more character driven and more like just all around, they just felt really epic. They felt like something that you couldn't really get with most other games at the time. Now, of course, like nowadays we have like games that are almost like movies that also are very, you know, story heavy and whatnot. Though, but I didn't really know much about that at the time. But yeah, that's pretty much what sums that up.
I agree with that. I feel like RPGs were a vast departure for, I guess, us. We're not old timers, but us gamers who've been playing games since before 2000. Because at the time, you're right, a lot of it was collect the stars in Mario or, you know, platform across the bridges in Crash Bandicoot. It wasn't like, you know, venture out with your party to defeat the evil spawn of Satan. So I think they are important for that. When did you start?
Okay, so the very first RPG I remember playing was that it was on the NES. Now keep in mind, like, the NES was, like, considered to be really old at the time. I think it was, like, maybe, like, about, like, almost 15 years old. Wait, no, not 15 years old. At least more than 10.
Yeah, I think 85, maybe.
Yeah.
Around then.
But anyway, so, like, basically I found an NES at a yard sale, and, you know, when I found out that there was a Nintendo system before the Super Nintendo, I was like, what the frick, like, oh my god, like, like, I couldn't believe it, so I always wanted to check it out, because, you know, I was just really interested into it, and, you know, two of the games that came with that NES that I got was Final Fantasy, the very first one, and the original Dragon Warrior, aka Dragon Quest. And when I played those, you know, I was really fascinated with the way how they looked, and, you know, I liked a lot of, like, medieval stuff, and I liked, like, I had, like, a lot of medieval different toys, so it was really cool to see something kind of like that in, like, a video game form, and even though it was very different, lots of reading to do, and my reading skills were Not the greatest. Well, they still aren't, but you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so yeah, when I was playing those games a lot, I want to say I started playing Dragon Warrior first because I thought the cover of that one looked cooler. So I started up with that one, I want to say. But yeah, it was really interesting, like just how like I was able to just like move around like a dude like on like a big world map to explore, and then with like monsters like everywhere, and then I had to like be careful of everything or else I would like die. And by the way, I died so many times in that game you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, I believe it. Dragon Warrior has given me a hard time over the years, every single one that I've ever played. But I definitely am jealous. I wish I started with the Super Nintendo. I grew up with the N64, and I don't regret having an N64, but I also remember vividly how the Super Nintendo was the console to own, and I just missed out on that generation.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, I grew up with the N64 as well, but I didn't get it until like a little later on. But yeah, my SNES was actually given to me by my cousin who got his N64, then he gave us his old Super Nintendo, and then from then on, I played a lot of stuff on that.
Hmm. Yeah, I was the only child. I had three older half sisters, but I was out of luck. I like something you said before. That was that your first RPGs required you to do a lot of reading, and I remember for me, I had to do a lot of reading through them too. And I think RPGs are part of the reason that I'm a little bit more equipped than most people. I'm not saying this right. I guess there's a stereotype that goes along with video games that, video games are stupid and you shouldn't play them. But I found like RPGs have been a great language learning device. And I feel like, well, we'll come back to that idea later. It's a cool thought, though, because, I was reading too about the origins of RPGs. And the first ones that were on video game console or even PC were entirely text-based.
Yeah, it's like they had to describe everything to you.
I couldn't imagine playing a game like that. So in some respects, I think that gamers who grew up with those older RPGs had something of a more challenging experience.
Yeah, I don't even know how the hell I would have done that.
I can't imagine. Those ones where you input commands, even something like Monkey Island confuses the hell out of me.
Yeah, and that is visual too, so it's like, yeah, could you imagine if you had to play a game like that, but like without any pictures at all?
There's a cult classic movie. I can't remember what it is, but the kid's like inputting commands into the computer. It's like Big or something, and in Big, Tom Hanks is like playing in the computer game. I don't remember the movie exactly, but I always look at that and like,
I think I know
wow,
which one it is. I think it's Big.
it is Big. Okay, yeah, it is Big because he's like got to kill the wizard or something and like get through the mountain.
Yeah, I
Which is like
remember
what a
that.
sign of the times. I remember seeing computers like that. Do you ever see like one of those old white computers with like, a bulky keyboard?
I've never seen one in person, at least not like, like an actual one. Like, I mean, I remember in the one of the museums in my old area, they actually had like computers that were kind of like that, but they were just for like display stuff. It wasn't like ones you can actually use or anything.
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen them, and my dad used to have one, so we got like a bunch of old stuff around the house. But it's always tripped me out. I couldn't imagine using one of them.
Nah, they're pretty funky looking.
Despite that, I don't have as many consoles or games as a lot of people here in our YouTube circle. Can you give me an idea of what your current console and game collection is like? Just an idea, roughly.
Alright, so basically, currently, as of right now, I have all the main Nintendo consoles still. I have all the main PlayStation ones. I have the two Xbox systems, and I have. Yeah, I think I do have. Yeah, I do have all the Sega stuff. At least all the main ones, like Master System, Genesis, Saturn, and a Dreamcast. Yeah, okay, yeah, I do have all those. I couldn't remember if there was another one that I didn't remember I have.
You got a
And
Turbo Graphics, I think?
yeah, I do have the just a plain original TurboGrafx. I don't have like the Duo or the CD add-on or anything like that. I just have the just
Mm.
regular plain old one.
But you got most of the core consoles that were
Yeah.
producing like the higher quality games.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I have all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I used to have a 3DO, but I sold it because let's just get real here. That thing just isn't really my thing.
Yeah, I mean, when you could play so much better, I mean, I'm not going to throw jabs at the 3DO. I've never owned it, but there's a reason that the consoles you own took off.
Yeah, and I still have all those systems that I have, and even though some of them like don't really have like a great amount of libraries, I guess you can say, but I at least do try and play them all like whenever I can.
So, out of those libraries that you do have, what would you say is the percentage of RPGs?
I'd say I'd say either PS1 or PS2, probably.
Has the most?
Yeah. I also do
Okay.
own a lot of PS ones on PS3, but I think like the one for PS1 and PS2, I'd say like those are like probably more of my favorite ones though.
PS1 and PS3?
No, PS1 and PS2.
Oh, PS1 and PS2. Okay. How many have you played?
Oh God. Okay, how many have I played? Let's see. I've played quite a lot of RPGs, and of course, I also have played a lot of games that I don't actually have because like I can just easily just do a lot of emulation stuff. That's usually how I play a lot of like Japan only games. But also with that though, I don't know the exact number I can give. I'm sorry, but but I can at least say I've played quite a lot of them. Like for an example, for Final Fantasy, I've played at least all of the main entries except for like three on well, and when I say three, I'm talking about like the original three, not Final Fantasy 6.
Mm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so hard to play that game. Like, what's the PSP is the best way or something?
Yeah, I've heard the PSP or the DS version are like the better versions of that game, but I never played any version of. At least with Final Fantasy 2, I've at least played the PSP one of that one a little bit, and then from then on, I've at least played at least one version, at least of one Final Fantasy game to at least give you an idea.
Better than me, man. I haven't played a single one of them. I'd like to. I've tried. I've tried playing 9, Save Data Corrupted. I tried playing 7, and I got a little bored. And I haven't had a means to play any of the first 6, even though I want to.
Oh,
I
okay.
also own 15, and I put that down. I'll come back to that later. Just felt like the wrong time. But I guess I'm jealous. I haven't really played that many. So you said that the PS1 and PS2 eras were some of the best for you. Would you mind explaining?
Well, I just think like a lot of them like okay, I guess I would give away the first thing out first is that I really like the music in a lot of RPGs, and I feel like a lot of PS1 RPGs and PS2 ones all had like really freaking good soundtracks, and also some of my top favorites come from both of those. But also at the same time, though, a lot of them also had some really interesting stories, and also some had some did a lot of experimenting with some battle systems that that we were used to on like from like the Super Nintendo and the NES, where a lot of it was pretty standard stuff. Where I think that was a time where you started to see a little bit more like ones that tried to be a little bit different. Like for an example, Parasite Eve, it was kind of like a half like action game but half RPG and half survival horror, and then on like the PS2 you would have like games like Shadow Hearts that would have like a judgment ring thing where you have to like do like a mini game to attack kind of thing. So stuff like that, I think, reason why I think those ones really are special to me.
All right, that's important. I mean, if it means something to you, then that outweighs anything else. I also like the point that you made was that, especially with the PS1 and the PS2, that they're technically advanced. To me, that's when the genre was really at its climax, when it was at its height, when Final Fantasy VII was the game that really sold so well over here in the States and I guess in Canada too. that it almost justified the existence of the genre. So that's when you saw so many games on, I guess, the PS1 really taking off. Even though I didn't get to experience them, I know of them. I know like the Lunar series. I know the Parasite Eve, like you mentioned. I know the Legend of Dragoon. I know Xenogears. Like I can name a lot of them, and a lot of that was born out of that era. So if there's one console that I'm jealous and I want to play more RPGs for, it would be the PS1.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely do like my PS1. And you know what's funny too? Back when I owned a PS1, like when it was like newish, like I didn't really play a lot of those RPGs until like way later on because, you know, like I said, like I like couldn't freaking read most of it, and also the fact that you know, like when I was talking with a lot of other people that were around my age, they also didn't really play a lot of like RPG type games. So, you know, I mostly just stuck with like Crash Bandicoot, and of course, the one game that my dad had was the Tecmo's Deception game, which I don't
Mm,
even know how the hell I played that as a kid, but hey, I love it.
that's great, man. Hey, I don't know how I started off with Majora's Mask too, but that game changed my life. So, I think those games are important, the nostalgic ones. I When I owned my PS1, it was actually a gift for my sister, and I only owned two games ever for it, so I never really got the hang of it. But it was like Pac-Man World Championship Edition and Crash Bandicoot Warped, and apparently Mortal Kombat, but I don't remember playing it or ever seeing it until years later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And yeah, Crash Bandicoot Warp's a good one.
Yeah, it was pretty iconic. All of them were pretty good. I played through a lot of them on the trilogy, but I don't want to drift into Crash territory here. In RPGs, what would you say is, you could just pick any really. Do you have a memorable experience with an RPG, like a story?
Ooh, a story. Let's see. There's quite a few I could name, but if I were to name one that had a really good story,
You want me to go first?
yeah. Wait, what? Sorry.
Do you want me to go first while you think of one?
Yeah, yeah. You can go first.
Okay. So my stories aren't like so amazing. In fact, I might even just pick one that's recent. But I remember really liking Dragon Quest, just the concept. I remember being nostalgic about Dragon Warrior Monsters. And I remember when I first saw the trailer for the Dragon Quest Monsters game on the 3DS, and I was like, this game's amazing. Where can I buy it? Turns out you couldn't buy it anywhere because it wasn't localized. And that infuriated me. And then I found out that Dragon Quest 7 had also released on the 3DS. And then I found out that Dragon Quest Theatrhythm was on the 3DS, and that there was going to be a Dragon Quest 8 on the 3DS, and that there was even a sequel, and then there was a Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, and there was like 5 Dragon Quest games on 3DS in Japan only. And this was when I started getting back into video games, and I was like furious. I was furious that the state of gaming could let it be so that we would never get another Dragon Quest game, or so it seemed. So I took that so personally that I started a petition to get the Dragon Quest Monsters localized, as well as all of the other games, which I don't know how that would work. You're petitioning to Square Enix. But it was a moment where I felt really strongly about RPGs, and then when the news came that Dragon Quest 7 was getting localized, I was just so happy. I was so happy. And then when it finally came and I played it, I didn't play it right away, but I played through it quickly. That's a 90-hour game. I did it in like a month or a month and a half. And shout outs to Spencer from the Itch Network for helping me through a challenging part of it. But I remember living and loving every moment of it. And it just felt so much better because of all the work that it felt like we overseas had done to show our passion for the genre. So if I think of one story, that's usually the one that I think of.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a cool one. Yeah, no, I do like that series quite a lot. Okay, I got a good one that I could mention, and I'm kind of surprised I haven't even talked about it already, and that's Chrono Trigger.
All right.
Yeah, so Chrono Trigger's story I always thought was really cool in the sense that, like, it's like a time travel thing, and whenever you usually do like a time travel story, it can either be really good or it could be like really bad and just not make any sense whatsoever. But I think that one actually did it really good. And also, I like all the characters. I think their dialogue is really good and memorable, and sometimes it can be pretty funny at times, especially the giant robot guy. And I liked all the settings in the game. I mean, of course, with time travel, there's a lot of different settings you can go to and whatnot. And also another thing I liked about it, or something I should say that's kind of interesting, is that like the game is like very Japanese looking, but yet like the way how they presented a lot of it seemed kind of Americanish. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's a game that can easily be appealed to by a lot of people that aren't super hardcore into Japanese culture can get into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's got the castles and the villains with like one of them's got like a white beard or something, and he's like possessed by someone else. Yeah, it doesn't feel distinctly Japanese, so I get that. And in that way, it's not like excluding anyone. When did you play Chrono Trigger?
I played it in 2005. It was on an emulator because I didn't know like the game was pretty expensive back then, and also I never heard of it. And then a friend of mine actually told me about it, and he told me that that it was that the person that made the art was made Dragon Ball and all that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty fucking cool. I didn't know that that he would ever work on like an RPG type of game. And yeah, that's how I first discovered that one, and I was hooked.
You're hooked. All
Yeah.
right. So, do you feel like RPGs create strong memories for you?
Oh yeah. Like I said earlier, usually it's story, characters, and dialogue is usually the biggest, most important thing, because it's not necessarily what happens in the story; it's how you tell the story. I think that's really what makes it great. Because even though there are some RPGs that the stories are very simple. It's just like, people trapped in an area, they have to get out, or, people like getting like kidnapped, gotta rescue them, blah, blah, blah. But there's like a lot of events that could happen in those simplistic stories that can really like sell it really well.
Mm. And is that offered in any other video game genre?
I think it can. It doesn't happen too often, but I think it can. I think it just depends on the game and the writing of it overall. Like obviously, there are certain games like I don't know, let's say for an example, like Devil May Cry, where like like those games like the story in them are they're not really great, but they're just kind of okay. But of course, you mostly play them for the gameplay anyway. That's like the biggest focus of that game. But then you would have like something like um crap.
I'm thinking like visual novels. Visual novels might have that.
Oh,
Also,
okay, there you go. Yeah, okay. I can name a good one for this one, for it comes to story and writing and such, is Zero Escape. Oh my god, that series is just phenomenal with writing and overall, like, plot twists, and man, so much crazy stuff happens in that series, it's unreal, and it's great.
mm. Do you think they borrow from the RPG genre, or I mean, maybe it's hard for us to say. I don't know the full history of video games, but
Well, I could say that, you know, maybe some writing material could have been taken from an RPG, but I don't know for sure. But either way, though, I'm just glad that game just got nailed it perfectly, though.
yeah, nothing like a great game. I guess what I'm thinking is like, do other genres take knowingly from the RPG genre in a way that's like faithful, or maybe in a way that's exploitative, like where they're just stealing the concept?
Oh well, I guess that's an easy one. There's a lot of games, at least especially nowadays, where there's a lot of games out there that will have a lot of RPG elements. Like leveling up and going to towns and buying your stuff and getting out and selling your old stuff and all that kind of stuff. Man, that's a lot of stuff. but but no, in all seriousness though, like there's a lot of like like action RPGs or like just like action heavy games that do have some sort of RPG elements with them. Like most recently, apparently, the new God of War game that just came out. Apparently, that game has like a little bit of RPG elements thrown into it, and that's kind of interesting. But then, of course, there's other games that also have it that seem a little weird. Like for an example, with Shadow Warrior on PS4, the reboot one. It's a first-person shooter, and that even has some RPG elements thrown into it.
Yeah, I want to play that one, by the way. I haven't installed it yet. But to me, the addition of a skill tree and then calling the game a role playing game just kills me. Like this, that does not make it a role playing game.
No, 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 it's not.
Still, I think some genres, like, do you ever hear people say, or like people call Zelda an RPG?
Yeah, I've heard that quite a few times, and well, the only thing I can sorta understand with that is that it's like, ooh, it's a fantasy game, but that's never really it though. Or oh my god, you're using a sword and you're venturing around, going into dungeons, beating bad guys, blah 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 blah. Like, I mean, I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I wouldn't say it's like a full fledged RPG. I mean, I guess the closest RPG Zelda game would be Zelda 2, if you think about it, because that one actually did have
Mm.
experience points, and you also really needed the grind to actually, like, get good at the game.
And that one pretty much has a Dragon Warrior map.
Yeah, it does, actually.
So I do want to play that one. I've never played it.
It's a good one, but you'll die a lot.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. I got the GameCube for that though. So the I guess what I'm thinking is like, the term RPG, people conflate different things into it. Like there's you could ask like five different people what an RPG is and they probably have five different responses.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just looking it up on Wikipedia just, for some background information. And it was saying something like a role playing a game is a game where you take a role of a main character. And I'm like, you could, have a clear definition. But I did notice a few things. One was that several subgenres are listed for RPG, one of which is action RPG. And turn-based is not listed as a subgenre, although you have stuff like tactical RPG. When you think of quote-unquote the RPG or an RPG, how do you define it?
Well, the first thing that comes to my head is, a turn-based one, and one where you have like party members, and yeah, that's basically what I think of. I think of like a turn-based, having a party, going out adventuring, and just beating up bad guys, leveling up, like you're not only like leveling up your own levels, but maybe leveling up some like magic powers and stuff like that. That's usually what comes to mind.
And I'm cross-checking all of my RPGs that I can see on my shelf right now, and I think all of them fit that definition.
Yeah, the good portion of the ones I've played are pretty much like that too.
And there can be variants. It can be like monster taming, It can be I don't know if it has to be turn-based, but I think there should be an element of that. Even if it's like a slight difference, if it involves a team, if it involves moves and attributing moves to them, if it involves statistics and growth, I think that's what makes the game the RPG. So that for that reason, I would not call Zelda the RP like an RPG. I don't think it is. But I see why people confuse it if there is no clear-cut definition for it.
Yeah, no, no, I do agree with that.
I think if you ask the gaming community, though, like we have a general idea of what it is. But then again, I hear people throw that term around very loosely. So I don't know.
Well, then again, a lot of people throw a lot of words very loosely, so especially when it comes to the gaming community, my lord.
Gosh, yeah, quote unquote community. With that in mind about how we perceive RPGs, I know we were talking a bit about their history, about where they came from, and if you look back at the origin of RPG, it's a tabletop game, and gosh, I can't imagine playing a game like that. Although I've been looking at meetups, trying to think of things to do to meet people, but regardless, they've changed, and now we've got these subgenres, and if you think about like the RPGs we have today and the RPGs we grew up with, do you think the changes are for the better?
Okay. There is some very interesting things I could say about this. So I know a lot of people usually complain with newer RPGs that a lot of them can be kind of too easy because there is a lot of RPGs that were from like the NES era that were like really freaking hard and very complicated and very like not knowing where the frick you're going kind of thing. Where now a lot of like nowadays like I find with nowadays it seems like there's a lot of like RPGs that like they're more clear on figuring out where you're supposed to go. They are easier to kind of pick up and play, and I do think that is a good thing because I do think something that is more easier access is it's better for anyone. But at the same time though, I do think it is nice to have a balance of having a game that's easy, but also having one that can be hard. But that's just me.
I feel like the difficulty was retained in the genre. Most RPGs that I've played have been somewhat difficult. I'm thinking even just PS2 era, SMT Nocturne. I'm thinking, and this is a stretch, but I remember when I was younger, I played Kingdom Hearts 2, and the boss battle at the end was really freaking difficult. And I know a lot of people have said like they have trouble with some of the Final Fantasy bosses, and even thinking to Persona 5, yeah, you can adjust them, but even normal is not really that normal.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've beaten both of those games, and yeah, the last boss in Kingdom Hearts 2, I remember did take me a couple tries, like when I played, and Persona 5, like I actually didn't die that many times when I played, surprisingly, but even that game did have its had its moments where it's like, okay, I got to like grind a little more and all that kind of stuff. But then again, that just might be me with the fact that I'm very familiar with how a lot of SMT games work. So, but even at that
Yeah.
though, I still screw up a lot on Nocturne. That one I think is mainly hard because it's hard to figure out where you're supposed to go in that one, and also just like everything just totally wants to like eat your asshole.
Yeah, that's not pleasant. However, I I like what you're saying. I think they have become a lot more streamlined, and even just comparing Persona 5 to Persona 4, I remember dying a lot in those hallways, or like I guess you call them dungeons, but they were pretty much just halls.
Yeah.
And in Persona 5 it wasn't much like that, although it did have its moments. I'm totally okay with being clear on where I'm supposed to be going as long as there's not an arrow right over my head.
Yeah, it's not like a golden pathway where it's like, oh, go here, go here, go here. Oh, no, no, go here. Oh. No, no,
As far as
I
this
get you on that. Like, I don't like it when games are too hand holding, but at the same time, I at least like it to be fair, you know? And I do think that Persona 5 was pretty fair when it came to difficulty.
Mm. And it didn't force you to do tacky things like little detective work to figure out what to do next. It was mostly, it lets you it gave you some free reign to play the game as you saw fit.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's different RPGs for different folks. So, they don't have like a one size fits all, but I think if you look hard enough, you'll find some good stuff out there.
Yeah, and like I said, I do think there does need to be a balance because, I don't think every single RPG out there needs to be the exact same thing. And, like I said, like I like having some that are maybe like a little bit more on the harder end, and then I like having some that are a little bit more on the easier end, and just things like that.
Mm. Thank God for retro.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to close off here on this point, and this was actually a major difficulty in thinking about this podcast was that I'm naturally inclined to think about like, oh, turn-based RPGs are going away, they're going to die, and that's what everyone thinks. But I don't think that's the same anymore. I think that's changed a lot, especially over the past 3 years. So, with that in mind, knowing that they're not going away, even if they're not going to be AAA, where do you see them doing the best that they can going forward?
Doing the best that they can. I think there is two options I can say. Is that I think they'll be like the best that they can on one, the PC, and two, the second one being is like not AAA but like middle market, I guess you can say. I don't know, maybe double A. I don't know. I think those two I think would be the best. And my reasoning for why is because there's still a very good amount of like turn-based RPGs that come out on both like Steam and GOG, and also at the same time like middle market for like, you know, like the Switch and the PS4 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of hope on all the platforms. I'm not as acquainted with PC games, but I think whether people know it or not, they do like turn-based games. I see people play those kind of games on a phone, and they might not know what to call it, but the genre is still out there.
Oh yeah, no, no. It's not like how it was in like last generation where like the big thing was like first person shooters and like RPGs were pretty much like almost non-existent, and the ones that were there, they were mostly action, which, you know, I'm okay with that, but at the same time though, it was, you know, one of those things. It was like, you know, it would be kind of nice to get a little bit more out of this one kind of thing.
One thing that the developers are doing to offset the cost too is, well, they have options now. They could just publish it digitally, or they can make these super hyper bundles with art books and whiskey glasses.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, no,
Ultra limited day one steelbook.
yeah, I think, like, you know me, like, I do like my physical shit, but if there's, like, you know, a game that is only digital only and it does look really good, I'll get it because, you know, like, if it looks good, because the way how I see it is that, like, video games are meant to be played, you know, whether it be a physical or digital, so I think, like, if a game interests me and I want to play it, I'll play it, you know? Like, I'm not
Mm.
gonna get, like, turned off, be like, ew, oh my god, it's digital only. I can't play this.
I agree. I mean, the games are meant to be played, and some of them are meant to be owned digitally. I can think of a perfect example. On my 3DS, I own Crimson Shroud, which is like one of the most classic old school RPGs I could play, but downloaded to a system so I could play it whenever. It's short, it's like about 10 hours, and it's not like going back and playing an old game.
I don't think I've ever heard about that one.
That one's by Level 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I always get mixed up with a lot of level 5 games, and I always forget what they do. The only one that comes to mind that I remember they did was Fantasy Life, and even that one
Hmm.
is very, different.
That is different, and we'll save that one for another day. But I guess that's about it for us, unless you got any final thoughts.
Um, I don't know. I still really enjoy RPGs. I think there are still some good ones that come out, even though some of them aren't like necessarily quote unquote game of the year material, or like the best, or like the next Chrono Trigger or the next Final Fantasy VII. I at least do think there are some that do offer some good things that I did like, whether it be like an interesting story, or whether it be some interesting game mechanics, or whether it be like some fantastic soundtracks or some interesting plot twist, you know, whichever it is. There's at least some good ones out there that I still really enjoy to this day, and of course there's still more from back in the day that I never played that I do really want to play eventually.
Yeah, and thank God those games aren't going away. You
Nope.
know, as long as we don't have a Fortnite takeover, I think we'll be all right.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually did kind of like playing a little bit of Fortnite here and there, but it's more of like a party game though. It's not a game I would play by myself though.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I'm only joking.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I always poke fun at all the stuff that I like all the time, so Like, oh my god, these RPGs are such weeboo trash.
Such. Anime girls, trash.
Yeah, but no, I don't care. As long as the gameplay is good and it has offered some enjoyment out of it, I don't care.
All right, and we'll leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. This has been the Majora T-Cast, and I've had a very wonderful guest, BioPhoenix. Thanks for joining me.
Yep. Hope to see you guys soon, and of course, make sure to just, I don't know, listen to the next podcast, and of course, check out all Majora T's stuff, and check out my stuff whenever you can as well. So that's
Oh my
it.
gosh, please check out his stuff. If you are not subscribed to BioPhoenix, then what are you doing? Here's a subscribe button for you. Go check him out.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. Anyways, with that said, thanks for watching, commenting, and have yourselves a great day.
All right, take care.